What up, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. Hope your day is going well. Hopefully, Lakers win tonight. They do have a game in a couple of hours, but before that, we do have some trade rumors to go through. Of course, I'm sure you've heard of it by now. The Lakers have been heavily linked to Deandre Hunter, part of the Cleveland Cavaliers team that just beat them the other night. Deandre Hunter actually played pretty well in that game. Was that maybe an audition to be a Laker and to join their team via trade? Maybe, maybe not, but according to reports, it definitely is a real possibility at this point. Mainly all of this coming from Chris Fedor, a Cleveland Cavaliers beat reporter. I'll pull up my screen for you guys to look along and follow along with me here. But if you haven't heard and if you haven't read the report, it's a little bit more detailed than this, but the summary is that the Lakers and Cavs have been discussing a trade that would send out Rui Hachimura and Dalton Connect in exchange for Deandre Hunter. So the question with that is, would it be worth trading Hachimura for him? What would the trade actually look like, as it does have to be a bit complicated. If you're not aware, the Cleveland Cavaliers happen to be a second apron team, which is pretty much salary cap hell, to put it lightly. If you're a second apron team, you can't take back money through a trade. You can only send out one player at a time through a trade, and a bunch of other limitations come with that. So they definitely wouldn't be an easy team to trade with. Even though the Lakers are not the first apron team or second apron team, they are hard capped at the first apron line. Therefore, they can't go into the first apron territory. They can only take back roughly 900K through a trade, and even then, they probably don't want to take back that much, as they currently have an open roster spot that they do have to eventually fill. On top of that, they can't get their roster below 14 unless they would actually save money through a trade. And with the Cavaliers, that would be very difficult to work out. So the inclusion of a third team is pretty much a guarantee. And according to further reports, I think coming from Brett Seigel, the third team in that trade would very likely be the Brooklyn Nets, a team that the Lakers have made a trade with during the past year, or roughly the past year and 1 month now, the Dorian Finney-Smith trade. With the Brooklyn Nets currently having cap space, they can take back money through a trade, having a bunch of guys that they're willing to trade. Everyone from Haywood Highsmith, Day'Ron Sharpe, Nick Claxton, even MPJ. Not really a likely candidate for this trade, but they have a bunch of guys that they're willing to trade. They're willing to get involved in trades and help make a trade work. So that might be the framework, and what that actually would look like through a trade is maybe something, before I actually get into my full trade ideas, let me just bring up simply what a two-team trade would look like, because it can't work. Because, again, the Cavs being a second apron team, there's no way that the Lakers could send out two players for only Deandre Hunter and be able to make the money fit. They can get pretty damn close with just Hachimura and Dalton Connect, but even then, they take back a little over 1 million, and therefore they go above the first apron. So that wouldn't work out. Even if they would try something else and not send out Hachimura or Dalton Connect, only doing Vincent and Maxi Kleber, gets a little bit closer, but it still doesn't quite work. I think it technically could be a legal trade, but at that point, they're roughly 100K below the first apron, and they have 13 players in their roster, so it couldn't work. They need to have 14 or you don't have a legal roster, so they can't sign that 14th player. Therefore, we have to add in that third team. And that's where the more complicated trade scenarios, hypotheticals get brought up, but at this point, they're maybe not that unrealistic. If they're going to make a deal work, I would imagine it might be something like Rui and Dalton going to Cleveland, Hunter, of course, coming back to LA. Then with Brooklyn, probably getting a guy like Gabe Vincent or Maxi Kleber, simply an expiring contract that they could absorb. And with Cleveland, Hunter not being a very valuable asset, in my opinion, which we'll touch on more in a bit here, then it's very likely that Dalton Connect or Rui Hachimura could be worth more than Hunter through the trade, therefore making the Cavaliers having to give up draft assets, maybe sending out a second round pick to Brooklyn, and the Lakers getting a second round draft pick in addition to that, also then taking back a guy like Haywood Highsmith so they don't fall below the 14 player count on their 15-man roster. Again, a little bit complicated, but that's probably what the framework would look like. Something along the lines of that. You can get a bit more complicated with it, but if you're going to make a deal work, make a legal trade that actually could work right now before the trade deadline, it would likely involve Rui and Dalton going to Cleveland, Hunter coming to LA, then either Vincent, Kleba, an expiring contract going to Brooklyn to make the money work. So we're going to go a bit further, but to kind of go a little bit of question answering, and if you guys have any confusion with it, let me know about how you feel about the framework of the trade, if you'd even make this trade to begin with, if you have any interest in Deandre Hunter, if you think he's a better player than Hachimura or not. We'll briefly talk about that. Yeah, I feel like that is kind of the sentiment with a bunch of fans right now. They feel like it doesn't move the needle that much. And I agree with you. It's not really a needle moving trade. They're not trading for a star player by any means here. That's not what they're getting. They're getting Hunter, who is a similar player to Rui Hachimura, playing the same position at that 3-4 spot, averaging roughly the same points per game, is a bit better on defense and is closer to the two-way wing, 3D wing kind of build, I guess, the frame. But it's not a direct one-for-one upgrade, not a big one in my opinion. And that's where a lot of the confusion does come in. And excuse me, when we get a bit more into the trade details and talk about the potential assets that come in, which I briefly touched on, it might make a bit more sense, but ultimately it comes down to where you think the Lakers' direction is currently heading in. um, I don't know if I'd call Rui maybe our most consistent player, but he's offensively is definitely up there for 3 point shooting. Definitely is one of their more effective guys in that regard. I would agree. Hold on here. There we go. But yeah, definitely if you're giving up Rui, you got to get someone back that can fill the spot, can at least be a somewhat upgrade in a few regards, I'd hope. And whether or not you think DeAndre Hunter would be that for them, that's up to you, but definitely not a massive upgrade. Okay. Yeah. Here's another thing that I think is important to touch on too, before we get too far into the further trade talk. Another thing to point to, apart from if or not he would be an upgrade over Rui, is kind of the not. I don't know if I'd compare him to a DeAndre Ayton with the reputation, probably not even close to it. But apart from simply talent, skill set, where they play at, another thing to factor in that we often do forget to factor in is fit, their effort, and then I guess the reputation too. And for DeAndre Hunter, I definitely wouldn't say that he has a DeAndre Ayton type reputation. Not anything really close to it in regard to playing with really, really bad effort at times and falling off a cliff compared to one game to the other. But I will say that he's definitely not the most consistent player, especially, maybe even a toss up between the offense and defense. Throughout his career, he's been a bit more consistent offensively than defensively. But unlike a guy that Hachimura, who's not very gifted defensively, I'd say, is not a very mobile defender, is not a very impactful defender, not regularly. Hunter does have the ability to be one. He simply doesn't put in the effort to do it, I'd say. And that's something you do have to factor in. If you have a guy that can be a 3-and-D wing, it's incredibly frustrating if they don't put in the work, if they don't want to be that player consistently. And that's kind of been the issue with DeAndre Hunter. Everyone from Atlanta fans when he played in Atlanta, Cleveland fans throughout the past year, really throughout the past few months with this season, have kind of said that exact same thing. He can be that, but isn't always committed to doing it. Okay, I think I answered a few questions with the basic framework of the trade and whether or not you would or would not want to do it. So let's get a bit deeper into what he would offer their team, the numbers with him, and what they say about the trade value through a trade, and if you're going to trade Rui for him, why that would be a good or bad trade. So basic stat line to begin with, Hunter averaging roughly 14 points per game this season, 4.3 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game, and shooting a near career low from both the field and 3-point line, 42.2% from the field and 30.9% from three. Definitely pointing to the 3-point shooting here. It's a major letdown for him. I think it's a career worst for him, especially coming off of a 38.5% year last year and nearly 40% in 2 years straight. He's having a down year, and if you're having a down year with a different team, is that going to get much better in the bright lights of LA? Usually it doesn't tend to go that way, but you never know, I guess. He is a good career 3-point shooter at nearly 37%, but again, with the down year, with him being very inconsistent, you want that guy around Luka Doncic and LeBron. If you're trading the one guy in your team that's actually been a consistent 3-point shooter, that's been the one thing you definitely can point to with Rui. This season, shooting above 42% from three. Do you really want to trade that for Deandre Hunter, who is nearly actually over 10% less than Rui? On top of that is a guy that is not always very good and reliable from the 3-point line. That's definitely something to think about. So apart from that and what he's putting up this season, doesn't really matter that much when you factor in the contract and how that'll affect the Lakers going forward too. After all, we keep hearing about them wanting to preserve their cap space and preserve their financial flexibility, quote unquote. And for Deandre Hunter, who does have a contract that goes beyond this season, that's a guaranteed year after this, making a little over 23 million this season, and then making roughly the same amount next season. Let me actually pull up the contract. I forgot to do that. But yeah, a few years ago, he did sign a 4-year, $90 million contract. And right now, making 23.3 million. Next season, making 24.9 million. And with the Lakers having roughly 55 million in projected cap space this summer, that 24.9 would eat into over half of it, cutting that down from 55 to, okay, not quite half of it, but pretty close to it, cutting it down from 55 to under 40 million, roughly 35 million. At that point, you can't sign a max level player, even though there's probably not one they would target. But in regard to the cap space, the financial flexibility, it does take a major hit. So at that point, are you trading for him to keep him, or are you trading him with the idea that, yes, you're getting him as a rental this season, but then are you trading him and then trying to trade him again this summer, using him as an expiring contract that they would then reroute? Might be an idea for them, but it does get pretty complicated at that point. Instead, would you rather just keep Rui Hachimura, sign him for probably a lesser salary than what Hunter will make, avoid having to try to trade him again even if they can, avoid the risk of him potentially getting hurt or playing bad and losing more trade value? That's another thing you have to factor in here. I get why they might do it. If you're not familiar with Hachimura's contract, it is an expiring contract. Therefore, he will be an unrestricted free agent this summer. If they feel like he might not be worth what he wants, if they simply don't want to bring him back, or if they don't feel like he'll fit into their plans financially, then I kind of get it. But if you're going to do that, you better get good trade value back in return. Again, with Hunter eating into that cap space and being a minor upgrade at best compared to Hachimura and having the worst contract, you definitely got to get back a good trade package. If it's not something like this and getting Hunter with Highsmith hopefully healthy soon and can help them out, then with a couple of second-round draft picks, then maybe try to address your center of the future kind of need, quote-unquote. Try to get a guy like Day'Ron Sharpe. Maybe instead turning that trade from Haywood Highsmith, even getting Sharpe with Haywood Highsmith, sending out Rui, connect again to Cleveland, Maxey to Brooklyn. I forgot to add in the draft picks, but you can frame that however you might want. Maybe it's a protected first round draft pick. I'm not sure we could go that far with it. But again, I could definitely see a couple of second round draft picks, Cleveland paying for the salary dump to Brooklyn, and them even paying us additionally with another second round draft pick, which the Lakers are pretty deprived of at this point, only having one tradable second round draft pick. Maybe that could be a bit more worth it. At that point, though, you do have a little bit of a center conundrum with all three of Ayton, Hayes, and Day'Ron Sharpe. You want that to happen. Is that maybe gonna push the division of DeAndre Ayton a bit further? Is he gonna get mad at that because I guarantee his playing time would drop? Do they care about that, even though it probably would affect the locker room a bit? Another thing to factor in, many different routes you could go with this, many different things you have to factor into it, and none of them are really perfect in my opinion. A bunch of them either have a big what if or a maybe attached to it, or have a is it even worth it attached to it. So definitely not my favorite trade for them to make. I understand why they might be trying to pursue it. Again, with the possibility of losing Hachimura for nothing, that's one factor. Then the possibility of getting back draft assets in return, even only a second round draft pick or two, better than nothing. Then if they actually believe that Hunter is a major upgrade, I guess that's something we could factor in. I personally don't believe that, but maybe they do. Definitely a lot of things to factor in here, but none of them are quite clear in my opinion. So it's definitely not a trade I'm heavily advocating for. But those are kind of only my thoughts with it and everything that I've thought about so far. You can definitely factor in different trade hypotheticals, different trade assets coming in or going, maybe even a different team than Brooklyn, whatever you want to do with it. But ultimately, this is kind of what it comes down to. If you feel like trading Rui for Hunter is worth it, if you feel like you can't retain Rui, if you feel like he's not going to be worth what he might want, that's probably why you do the trade. All right, I'll get to a few of your comments here. Let me know what you guys think. If you're for it, not for it. Yeah, definitely a move for the future, in my opinion. If it's all about the 2027 free agency or maybe 26, this one, I guess that's definitely something to factor in if they care more about that than this current team and trying to make it the best they possibly can. That's definitely one direction they could take, maybe one direction that they might be leaning in, and that's why they're even thinking about this trade to begin with. More of a future move than one for this team, as it doesn't really make them that much better. Yeah, the basic stat line with him, you are correct. I think I actually forgot to switch my camera before, but when I went over his player profile, is shooting only 30.9%, 42% from the field, roughly the same amount as Rui from a point output and scoring output. They're actually pretty comparable from a scoring, rebounding, and assist standpoint, but yeah, definitely not having the best year compared to him shooting nearly 40% last year, now being down to 31%. That's a pretty massive fall off. Do you really think he'd get back to that with their team with even Luka Doncic and LeBron and Austin playmaking for him? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but not a whole lot of good reason to point to with it. That's definitely something you have to factor in. Is there a better package than this one? I'm not sure if you're referring to this straight package that I showed, or if you're referring to this one, or simply a DeAndre Hunter package in general. In my opinion, this is probably the best one you could get for DeAndre Hunter, getting back Day'Ron Sharpe and Haywood Highsmith, given that Highsmith will come back pretty soon and can get back to his 3-and-D level that he showed last year. Then with Day'Ron Sharpe being a productive backup big, maybe if they'd get him, they could find a way to trade DeAndre Ayton, excuse me, or maybe even Jackson Hayes, even though I wouldn't want to. That would give them a different option at least. Then they could get another second round draft pick. Then they would have two tradable second round draft picks instead of only just one. They could go out to make another small to mid tier size trade. Maybe something like that. Again, it's not my favorite trade. I don't think Hunter is really an upgrade, if only a minor upgrade at best compared to Rui, purely from what he could be, hypothetically. But again, that's not a major upgrade. I'm not too mad about losing Dalton Connect. He's not worth much at this point. Definitely not mad about losing Kleba or Vincent as purely a salary dump, but you're not getting a whole lot better, even with the best possible trade package, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm sure somebody out there has made a Nick Claxton variation work, but I don't think that's very realistic. To make it kind of realistic and fairly easy to make the money work, at best you're getting back a Dayron Sharp or Haywood Highsmith, maybe both of them. But yeah, not many trade packages better than that one for a Deandre Hunter trade. Yeah, and with me showing that, let me know what you guys think. Does getting back Highsmith and Sharp change it for you? Would you then be more for it? Any different or still entirely against it? Let me know. Like I showed before, you really can't do that for not a two-team trade anyway. There's a variation that I can do, I guess, but it's less likely if you're not giving up Rui. In that case, you're probably gonna have to maybe not give up a second round draft pick, but you're definitely not getting back one in return. Even though you might not have to send it to Cleveland, you might have to send it to Brooklyn for the salary dump to make the money work. So maybe, I don't know. I think ultimately they probably want to include Rui again from the financial standpoint to make the trade work. And then if they're worried about losing him, I think that's why we're hearing about it. I don't know if it's Cleveland driving that more or if it's the Lakers driving it more. Regardless, I think he probably would be included, but there might be a way to make it work. And yeah, like I kind of keep referring to, this is the other side of it. Um, you could definitely make an argument to do it, given that Hunter is more of that 3 and D archetype, is more of a two-way player compared to Rui. I still value what Rui brings to their team, and the 3 point shooting is a lot more consistent with him compared to Hunter. But if you get the version of Deandre Hunter from last season, for example, a guy that averaged well over 14, 15 points per game with good 3 point shooting, and throughout the latter part of the season, post trade deadline, played pretty good defense, even throughout the playoffs, played pretty well too. If you get that guy, I think you can make an argument that he was an upgrade over Rui Hachimura. So it's really what it comes down to with how you're looking at it, how you're hoping Hunter would play with their team compared to how he's playing right now in Cleveland. You definitely can look at it that way. It's not that Rui is miles better no matter what way you look at it. Just I think from a 3 point shooting standpoint and a team chemistry one, those are the major highlights with keeping him in my opinion. But with Hunter, he does have more upside in regard to fit. He does have a little bit more long-term upside. And then purely if you think you can make a big trade, you have some player in mind to make a big trade for this summer, he does help you with that way too. Because even if you would re-sign Rui Hachimura, you wouldn't be able to trade him for another 3 months, barring it being a sign and trade. So that could be a factor too. I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to highlight the comment and move along. Why would Brooklyn do that for a second? Um, I'm not sure what trade package you're referring to, but if you're talking about the latter that I showed, they're not going to get anything for. Actually, the 1 second would mainly be for this one. I didn't fully, I guess, fill out this trade with additional second round picks. In this one, I kind of said it but didn't reroute it. This second round draft pick would go to Brooklyn in addition to the one that's already getting sent to them. Would that be enough yet? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, I said it, but this is actually what I mean, that we would get that to then reroute it. Ultimately, would that be enough? Not sure. But Dayron Sharp is kind of under an expiring contract. Does have one additional year after this one, but it does happen to be an option. Highsmith currently hurt, doesn't have any trade value. Expiring contract for them as well. They're in a rebuild. They're not trying to win. I mean, even from that standpoint, it helps them. They get worse, and therefore their draft pick gets better. I I mean, hypothetically anyway, there is the draft lottery, but that could be a driving force for it. Getting any draft compensation they can, getting a higher draft pick, you know, probably fully selling their team after this point, getting a guy like, um, yeah, just that would kind of be the driving force behind it. Reading a few of your comments right now. Would I say that Rui and Dalton are locks to be traded? I definitely wouldn't call them a lock to be traded. Dalton pretty close, but not Rui. Even with this report and with the rumors going on regarding the swap of him for Deandre Hunter, I still wouldn't call it a guarantee. We've heard many trade reports in the past that sound like they're gonna happen, ultimately to not happen. So even though they're not opposed to trading him, obviously, or even negotiating with his name and contract in current trades, it does mean that it's going to happen. I don't. I really wouldn't call them the same player. If you watch DeAndre Hunter, he, again, if committed, is definitely more of the two-way player archetype compared to Rui. Rui is more of a big wing that plays like it, especially on defense. Hunter, yes, is kind of the same size as Rui, doesn't weigh as much, is definitely a bit leaner and quicker. Roughly 220 compared to Rui being 230, 235. Rui's like a true four, even though power forward is kind of a tweener position in the modern NBA in general. Hunter is more of a small forward, in my opinion. Yes, he'll play a lot of power forward because, again, there's not much of a difference between the three and the four in today's game. But Hunter is a bit more of that smaller, quicker wing, even though, again, small and real quotation marks here. But he does things differently on the court. He plays different, is quicker defensively if committed. Um, Definitely plays different offensively as well. Has more of a driving game compared to Rui. They're both pretty good from the mid range. I'll say that. Um, Hunter, when actually in the right state and mentally aggressive, he'll definitely attack the rim better and more than Hachimura does. He can be a higher volume 3 point shooter than Rui. They're somewhat comparable, but quite different too. Yeah, really getting into the future, even a part of the trade that we're talking about right now. I know there's been reports of the Lakers wanting LeBron to take a pay cut. I don't really think he'd come back if they would ask him to take a pay cut. You know, that's been a conversation for 3 or 4 years now. He took a very minor pay cut 2 years ago. I think roughly 1 million to get them under the second apron. But he didn't do it last summer. I don't think he'd do it again if he would stay with their team. I kind of think in general it'll be his final year with their team this season. Um, if you'd go to a different team, Cleveland, Golden State, whatever it might be, at that point it wouldn't be a pay cut for him. He's never been with that team in regard to salary from last season, so it wouldn't be viewed that way. I just think with their team, he really wouldn't want to do it. It wouldn't be a mockery. That's not a good word for it, but I just think he really wouldn't want to do it from what we've seen so far. Do I think Rob regrets letting go of Dorian Finney-Smith? No, not with the way that Finney-Smith has looked. I think if Finney-Smith was currently playing like he did for their team post trade deadline, then maybe. Given that Aiton's not been that great, given that Laravia has been pretty good and Marcus has been very good lately, but maybe a little bit of regret at that point, but definitely not that given the fact that Finney Smith has not played well, that they have all three of Aiton, Laravia, and Marcus Smart because they let him go. I definitely don't think there's a lot of regret, but I wish there would have been a way to keep Finney Smith and get that version of Finney Smith with the three of Laravia, Smart, and Aiton. But that only would have been possible if LeBron took a pay cut. Give me a moment. I'll give you guys a little bit of premium data, quote unquote, with a website I pay for, so I might as well use the data, bballindex.com. We'll do a little player comparison from Rui to Deandre Hunter. Okay. So whether you're a advanced stat believer, lover or not, um, neither one of Deandre Hunter or Rui have ranked that well this season. For example, Rui Hachimura grading out with a bunch of F grades per LeBron rating. And yes, that's a real rating if you're not familiar with advanced stats. I can't fully list what it all stands for, but they're all advanced impact metrics on offense, defense, combination. Overall, Rui at an F grade, overall LeBron. Offensive LeBron D minus, defensive LeBron F. So yes, that obviously is impacted by the team you play for. The Lakers not being a good defensive team, being worse on defense with Hachimura on the court. So he will be affected by that. Whether or not it's a great reflection of what he's done, I think the offensive LeBron is way too low, so I disagree with that. But Hunter, not a whole lot better. Definitely better from an overall standpoint, ranking out with a B compared to Hachimura being an F. Um, that's the wins above replacement or wins over replacement value. Defensive LeBron F, so not a whole lot different. This again is purely from player impact per 100 possession. If you break it down to perimeter defense, for example, Hunter is a pretty good one-on-one defender, but he's not a great team defender. That's always been the major issue to point to with him. Having an A minus in perimeter isolation defense, but ranking below average in ball screen navigation, off ball chaser defense, pickpocket rating, and passing lane defense. Hachimura, again, I don't always think these are perfect metrics because I don't agree with some of these for Hachimura, like the off ball chaser defense. I don't see in any world where Hachimura can have an A grade, but purely for perimeter isolation defense, Hachimura is okay if he's on the right matchup. Um, Ball screen navigation, never been strong suit for Rui. That's a pretty accurate grade for him, D minus. Passing lane defense, he's not a defensive playmaker. That's a pretty accurate grade too. So overall, you're getting a slightly more capable defender with Deandre Hunter. I'm not going to say necessarily a major upgrade. A guy that can do more, is a bit more mobile on defense, is a better chaser compared to Rui, but it's not like whether you keep Rui or trade him for Deandre Hunter, you're getting a massive defensive upgrade. All right, we got a super chat here from Art and Kim. Does Rob regret letting Jordan Goodwin go? Yeah, I think that one you definitely can make a much bigger argument for compared to Finney Smith at this point, given that Goodwin is having a really good year. Give me a moment, I'm actually gonna pull up the numbers for him. But yeah, that one on the other hand though, because they let him go, that's why they're able to sign Marcus Smart. So kind of a double-edged thing. Like I think they regret letting him go. He's turned out to be an impactful player for Phoenix, is averaging over 8 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. That's my favorite thing about Jordan Goodwin. Probably one of, if not the best rebounding guard, maybe apart from Westbrook, a few other guys that might be considered a guard, but not really. Amen Thompson, whatever. But definitely one of, if not the best rebounding guard off the bench. Um, for a while there, he was shooting at about 38%. Lately, that's dropped down to 33%, but is a good defender, averaging 1.4 steals per game, 21.7 minutes per game. I think if the Lakers had kept him, he would definitely be a big part of the rotation. Definitely is playing way better than Gabe Vincent. If only it was a choice between him or Gabe, not him or Marcus Smart, which is what it came down to. Um, Ideally, looking back on it, they would have salary dumped maybe Gabe Vincent, somebody like that, instead of simply cutting Jordan Goodwin. Yes, it may have been the easy route. He had a partially guaranteed contract for, I think, only 200K, even less than that, maybe. But it was the easy route, and that's why they did it. I understood why they did it, but I never fully agreed with it then, and I agree with it even less right now. I think they probably do too, given that they've been trying to find a player like him. I mean, they gave a shot to a guy like Nick Smith. They gave a 10-day contract to Kobe Buffkin, hoping for a more reliable two-way guard option off the bench, a guy that can play off the ball offensively, which is what Goodwin did for them. I mean, last season in 29 games for them, shooting 38.2% from the three-point line, rebounding well, playing great defense, being a pest at the point of attack for their team. Yeah, I think they do regret it a little bit. I think they regret not being a bit more creative with how they built their team and trying to keep Jordan Goodwin on that team. Yeah, I think they regret it a little bit, and I think they should too. All right, we got another super chat from the notorious CRG. Appreciate it. Appreciate you tuning in again. Um, the comment is just got on. Hunter does not move the needle. Yeah, I kind of went through my thoughts in it to briefly, summarize the entire thing. I definitely wouldn't say that he's a major upgrade, if any upgrade compared to Rui. Defensively, minor upgrade when committed is more of the two-way archetype, the 3-and-D archetype. But comparing their current impact, comparing their current numbers and their overall production, definitely not a needle mover, definitely not a game changer, whatever you want to call it. If you get creative with the trade, it could maybe benefit their team. Can pull up what I went through before again. But yeah, if you get creative with the trades, maybe Hunter coming to LA with a guy like Haywood Highsmith, then getting additional draft compensation, maybe a second round draft pick from Cleveland, using the second round draft pick that they might send it, like not only one but two of them, using that to then salary dump a guy like Gabe Vincent, therefore opening up not only more money but having a roster spot left in your team. Then you can put that toward the buyout market. If you have roughly 4 million or a little over 4 million to offer, actually nearly 5 million to the buyout market, hey, you could definitely fit in somebody, that's not usable cap space, but more space under that first apron. You can get a bit more creative, so it benefits you that way. Maybe you get a bit more creative and try to get Day'Ron Sharpe, either with or without Haywood Highsmith. Yeah, there are definitely avenues to make it work. I don't think in general it's a game-changing trade, a big-time needle mover. I agree with you. But there are potential pathways that benefit them that I kind of understand why they might be trying to look into it. But appreciate the super chat. Hopefully that kind of gives you a slightly detailed breakdown on why I would think that way and why they might be thinking that way. But yeah, Yeah. Appreciate the further super chats here. Yeah. No worries at all for having to repeat. I think that's your follow up one here, but yeah, there has to be a third team involved. You can't make the trade work without a third team. If you don't include a third team, then you're struggling with the second apron. Cleveland capped by the second apron. They're in salary cap hell. They can't take back money through a trade. They can only send out one player through a trade. So even if you would try to do Kleba and Vincent, that's not going to quite work. Technically, it could, but then the Lakers would have 13 players in their roster, and that's a no-no. You have to have 14, if not 15. So they don't have enough space to sign that 14th player. Therefore, that doesn't work. You can't trade Rui and Connect. That doesn't work financially. You're taking back over a million, and therefore you cross over the first apron. So it does have to be a three-team trade. Whether or not it's Brooklyn, that's up for debate. It could be a different team. I think they're simply the easiest team to work with. They have cap space left. They're the only team with any cap space. They're in a rebuild. They're not opposed to taking on expiring contracts or veterans that they'd simply waive or buy out, whatever it might be. Yeah, they're definitely the most realistic, definitely the best trade partner to get involved. I think that would be the logical pathway for them to go, adding in Brooklyn. But yeah, no worries at all. I don't mind repeating. This is the subject, the topic of the live stream. So appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the super chats. I don't ever like to necessarily say the 2020 blueprint as they don't quite have the team built for it anymore. But purely in regard to 3-and-D players with athletic big men, lob threats, that's what Luka likes to play with. But really the 3-and-D players around them, they had that with Danny Green, KCP, Avery Bradley. I don't know why they went away from it. Ever since that team and kind of the 2021 team, guys like KCP they had yet, Caruso, who kind of became a 3-and-D player for them, more of a defensive minded player with the occasional 3-point shot. But regardless, they had two-way talent around them. It worked. Then they went entirely away from it. Ever since then, they've built their team around LeBron and AD, now LeBron and Luka, with a bunch of one-way players, and I'm not sure why. Guys like, I don't dislike Rui Hachimura, but he's definitely a one-way player. Guys like Vanderbilt, definitely a one-way player. Even going back to 2022, I don't even want to talk about that team, but Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, guys like that, one-way players, unfortunately. Yeah, the list goes on and on. I don't know what changed in their team building approach, but it definitely went away from what they tried to do at one time, what worked for them at one time, and I've never quite agreed with it. Yeah, I like to see comments that are maybe not for the Deandre Hunter trade, but not against trading Rui, as I'm definitely not against trading him either. I see value with keeping him, but there's also definitely a lot of value with trading him, given the fact that he is under an expiring contract, given the fact that you do have to pay him to retain him this summer, and after you pay him, therefore giving him a new contract, you can't trade him for another 3 months after that point. And if you're losing the expiring contracts of Kleba and Vincent, you don't have much money left to work with at that point, and barring them making a trade for a different player that does have a contract that goes beyond this season, then they really can't make a trade. I don't know if that's what they're planning or not planning, but that would kind of be off the table. So that would be one pro to trading Hachimura, whether it be for DeAndre Hunter, whoever else it might be. That would be the argument for it, or definitely a big part of it. Then from the skill set standpoint, I agree with you. Kind of the one redeeming factor, maybe more than just a redeeming factor, given the fact that he's the only guy on their team that does consistently shoot well from the 3-point line, is that 3-point shooting. I value him a bit more lately with him coming off the bench, finally buying into that role. Not only him kind of being reserved against it, which we've heard about off and on throughout the past couple of years, but with Redick finally doing it too. I'm a little bit back on the good graces of keeping Rui, but definitely not entirely on off board with trading him either. If we use the Nets to get three lesser firsts, why not use the Rui Dalton package for Wiggins with one of the picks? Um, I think it comes down to they probably tried to make different trades and different trade offers for Andrew Wiggins that they haven't liked how Miami negotiated with them. They haven't liked what Miami has maybe tried to demand in return. So maybe coming down to that, I can't entirely speak to it, but probably. Um, excuse me. I don't know if they feel like they can do the trade for three lesser first round draft picks. I know I've shown that, and I would look into it, but you're definitely not guaranteed to get back three of them. That was kind of a unique circumstance with Phoenix having a very terrible outlook and Utah thinking they could take advantage of it. I think that's the only reason why they got back three of them. For the Lakers, I think they'd probably get back two, maybe with additional second round draft picks, but probably not getting three lesser first round draft picks for their one. Why can't we just break the rules like the Clippers? I would love to see them be found guilty or that they actually did do that to some degree. I think that would be pretty funny. When do I think a deal gets done? I wish I knew, but knowing them, probably closer to the end of this weekend rather than tonight or tomorrow night. The sooner the better, in my opinion, given that they have more time to make further trades or further adjust their team if they feel that they need to. But yeah, it might come all the way down to the trade deadline. Yeah, this is actually a good follow up. You technically can. It's for a very, very limited time frame. I think like what 72 hours I think you have to go below 14. You have to get back to it. You can go down to 13, but you have to get back to 14 pretty quick. But if you make a trade that would push you under 14 players, but you get back um, cap relief or first apron relief, yeah, you could, but then you'd have to go put that toward a free agent pretty quick. So you'd have to have a good plan in your head to make the trade, go under 14 players, and then sign a free agent or make a follow up trade to get you back above 14 or 14 at least. But yes, technically you can, just not for very long. Like I keep talking about, I he can be if committed and playing like the version of himself that some people might remember. But this season definitely is not a much better two-way player than Rui. Definitely is not a consistent option. Simply put, the guy shooting below 31%, that's roughly 12% worse than Rui. So purely from the three aspect of 3 and D, isn't quite up to par. Defensively, also is not playing very well. Um, whether you like defensive BPM or not, he is a minus 1.3 this season, is a minus 1.3 on his career. Then, like I showed with the B-ball index advanced stats here, is maybe an average defender at best this season per perimeter defense grades. If you go for um, complete player impact with what I showed before per 100 possessions here, at best is a below average defender. Actually grades out with an F per D LeBron rating. Offensively is a bit above average even with the down 3-point shooting year, but I wouldn't call him a way better two-way player than Rui. Rui's not even a two-way player. I do agree with you. Hunter at least can be a two-way player if committed and if playing well, but it's not a guarantee with him. Would I trade Aiton? I would, but I don't think there's going to be a team that really wants him. If you're trading him, I think you're doing it for purely a salary dump. You'd have to attach an asset to get rid of him, and at that point, it's probably not worth it. Barring a team that would trade for him and would want him and actually value him a little bit through a trade, that'd be the only way I'd do it. Yeah, you can get Dayron Sharp in the deal. I talked about this before. That's one option with it. I showed it in one trade that I did. Let me adjust that trade pretty quick. Yeah, you can get Dayron Sharp through the trade. You can, instead of getting Haywood Highsmith, you can get Hunter and Dayron Sharp, Rui and Dalton Connect to Cleveland, Maxi or Gabe to then Brooklyn, and then they get the second round draft picks that we would then get for taking on Deandre Hunter, ideally anyway. If we're going to give up Rui, I want draft compensation back. I don't think we can demand a first round draft pick, even a protected first round draft pick, but I think we definitely can demand a second round draft pick, maybe even two of them, to then reroute the second round draft picks that we get from Cleveland to Brooklyn to then do a salary dump and ideally get Dayron Sharp or Haywood Highsmith, somebody like that back in return. Not sure if only two second round picks would be enough to get Sharp. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we'd have to throw in our one final second round draft pick. I sent that to the wrong team, but going to Brooklyn. I think I messed that up, but yeah, no, I messed it up. Anyway, yeah, I cut out one second round pick. If they would get three, which we could technically do, that could be an option, and getting Dayron Sharp could be much more realistic at that point. Did get another super chat here from the notorious CRG. Appreciate you, my guy. I forget what the LeBron suffix means in the stats. Yeah, I can look that one up. It's something I can never remember either. LeBron stats. It's like luck adjusted something. Okay, I have it pulled up now. Yeah, it is luck adjusted player estimate using a box prior regularized on off rating. So basically meaning with luck applied to it, using their impact estimates on both offense and defense to create a two-way stat. It's definitely not my perfect or preferred stat. I personally prefer EPM a bit over LeBron rating, over Darko rating. That's another one. Don't ask me what that one stands for. I couldn't tell you. EPM is my personal favorite, especially defensive EPM. That one to me tends to be the most accurate. LeBron ratings are good off and on. I think the offensive LeBron rating is better than the D LeBron rating, but everyone has their own pick. There's a bunch of different advanced metrics nowadays, but that's the one that B-Ball Index does use, so I tend to refer to it. Okay. I think that's a follow up from a previous comment you made. Yeah, I'm definitely not disagreeing with you. I'd be interested in hearing where you think he should be playing, because I think right now for Cleveland, he's playing more of the three rather than the four. So you think he's more of a four compared to a three. Whereas with the Lakers, I think that was the problem with Rui before he came off the bench. They were playing him at the three, where he's definitely more of a four, not even really anywhere close to a three, in my opinion. So maybe if you do a position swap with them, put Hunter into whatever role you think he should be in more, it could help him out. Yeah, that definitely could be a factor with it. Yeah, I don't want to hate on Rui too much at all because I like Rui, but if you're making him play that three spot again, making him defend smaller wing players or guards, he does tend to look like he has cement blocks for feet sometimes. He really can't switch on defense. He's not a good screen navigator. That's the main problem. Trading Bronny and Braun to Venezuela. Even apart from Dalton going to Cleveland, wherever he does end up, I definitely wish him the best. Even apart from that, I guarantee once Connect does get to a different team, especially if it's a rebuilding team that would give him more playing time and probably a bigger role to offer him, I guarantee he will get back to kind of what he was pre-trade deadline last year, being a 35 to 40% three-point shooter, being a movement shooter, a guy that can drop 20 on any given night. Yeah, I think he's a legitimate NBA player. I think there's simply been too much with what happened with Lakers and him, the failed Mark Williams trade, them bring him back and trying to integrate him back into the rotation, benching him, playing him off and on. It's been a bit too much for him. As a very young player in the first team that he's played with in the NBA, I think it kind of ruined it for him. But on a different team, I think there's still hope. I often compare him to a Luke Kennard type of player. I think he can at least be kind of like that. No, he'll probably never be a good defender, but he can impact the game offensively. He can be a good 3-point shooter off the bench, a good spark plug. Yeah, I think on a different team, he'll be fine. Does that mean that a plus 1.0 LeBron rating is equal to having a LeBron on the court? No, it doesn't quite mean that, but all joking aside, I think LeBron does have a plus 1.1 LeBron value this season. I think it's a little bit confusing, apart from the joking around here that they use LeBron as a rating when he's an active player. I wish they kept that until after LeBron retired, but yeah, I get what you're saying here. All right, we have another super chat here from Wavy TV 2172. Appreciate it. The comment is how much money to outprice Detroit for Duran in restricted free agency? I actually just came across a pretty good website for um, price valuing in free agency. So let me actually pull it up and we can have a little conversation about that. What one was that again? Here we go. You're talking about Jalen Duran, according to NBA salary model dot xyz. I forget the creator for this, or I would credit him, but he is a reporter, maybe a past reporter. After we do this, I'll give him credit on Twitter here. But according to his model here, using the Darko stat that I did refer to before, yet another advanced metric, right now, according to his model, Jalen Duran has a projected value of 20.3 million. Next season at nearly 25 million, 29.3. This is with the projected salary cap going up. In my opinion, it would take more to get him than 24.9 million. If I had to guess, he'll get a comparable contract to who actually is a good comparison lately. I can't think of a center off the top of my head that got a pretty big contract, but in a range, probably 30 to 35 million. Maybe not quite up to a max contract it wouldn't take. Wouldn't doubt if you would get that from Detroit, purely from them having his bird rights and having a little bit more flexibility with him. But for a different team, if for whatever reason Detroit wouldn't want to retain him, which I think they will, at the bare minimum, 30 million per year in my opinion. But if you care about this model, if you take any interest in it, this is what they think he's worth per his impact per Darko rating. So take that with a grain of salt, but it's a fun model to plug players into. I was actually looking at Rui Hachimura with this the other day. And to me, this website perfectly projected his value. This is right what I would have him at, right around that 12 to 13 million range this season, whereas he's making 18.3 at a current minus 5.6 million surplus. If you use his current impact, again, per Darko, I'm not going to tell you what that all stands for, but another advanced stat that combines both offense, defense, a little bit of luck regulation in there too. Projecting him at 13.6 million next season, 14 in 27-28, and so on and so forth. Yeah, if they would bring back Rui, if they don't trade Rui, then you're hopefully looking at getting him back at a discount. So hopefully that answered your question. I don't know if you like the model or not, but in that probably 30 million range for Jalen Duren. I know there's been a lot of Jordan Poole trade talk. This wouldn't work financially, but for a different team, I don't think the Lakers will trade for Jordan Poole. He could be a trade option. You guys getting into a all-time player talk right now? Uh, Seen a comment before about role players that I liked. Trying to find it. Yeah, is a bit off topic, but in terms of role players on the team, who is my favorite? On this current team, I wish I could. For a long time there, it was probably Jared Vanderbilt. Before Vanderbilt, it was Alex Caruso. I love the hardworking guys that don't get paid much, are often undrafted. That does happen to be the case for Caruso. I think Vanderbilt went undrafted too. This season, I've really been liking Jackson Hayes. You know, he doesn't get much love, and a lot of Laker fans don't like him. But I thought he's played pretty well. I think he's been a really good fit with Luka Doncic. Isn't quite up to how much I liked Caruso. I'm literally wearing a Caruso jersey right now. I don't think you can see it, but yeah, Caruso is my favorite for a long time. Christie was my favorite until they traded him, unfortunately. But you got to do what you got to do to get Luka Doncic. This current team, I don't have a lot of role players I'm very attached to. Probably again Hayes for if I had to pick one. Marcus Smart maybe too. I think Marcus played really well. I love the effort that he plays with. He can set the tone for their defense and the tone for their energy. Probably between Marcus and Hayes if I had to pick two. My God, you guys are having a goat talk in a live stream about trades. Anyway, to reiterate, I'll go through my thoughts on the Deandre Hunter trade one more time, then I think we'll wrap it up. Just if you're coming in late and might be a bit confused about the title, what I'm talking about, and where this is all coming from, the trade hypothetical, or not even hypothetical, the trade report is coming from Chris Fedor, a reporter for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Does happen to be a credible report linking the Lakers to Deandre Hunter in a trade package that would likely send out both Rui Hachimura and Dalton Connect. So the trade framework with that would have to include a third team, which many believing would be the Brooklyn Nets. Therefore, we'd have to make something work like Haywood Highsmith coming to the Lakers, sending out an expiring contract like Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber, whoever else it might be. Then hopefully if you're getting DeAndre Hunter taking on the contract, he does have another year on that contract of 24.9 million next season, which to me is a little bit of a net negative in regard to trade value. then you could probably get back a second round draft pick or two, especially if you're trading Hachimura, who, whether or not he's a better player, that's up for debate. I think he does have more trade value. So you could probably get back a second round draft pick, reroute that to Brooklyn, maybe keep one, then get Rui Hachimura, get a bit more creative, try to get Deandre Sharp, so on and so forth. The trade hypotheticals go on forever. That's what you can maybe hope to do. That's what, if they make this trade, I would like the Lakers to do. I don't want them to simply trade Hachimura and Dalton Connect and just get Deandre Hunter and then salary dump somebody to make the money work. If they're going to do that, I hope they get back Rui Hachimura, who, if he can be healthy anyway, or Deandre Sharp, or at the bare minimum, a couple of second round draft picks, or ideally even up to a protected first round draft pick, but I kind of doubt that. Regardless, that's what all the talk is coming from, mainly from that report from Chris Fedor again, a couple follow-up reports here and there. But the Lakers appear to be open to trading Rui Hachimura. They apparently like Deandre Hunter, whether it's the fit, whether it's the future trade flexibility, if they want to use his contract in a future trade, having money and contracts to trade this summer. Whatever it might be, they're definitely interested in it. Whether or not it happens, not sure, but it's definitely a real thing and we do have to talk about it. So I think that kind of wraps it up for my thoughts on the Deandre Hunter trade, trading Rui Hachimura, Dalton Connect, the entire trade package. If it's a good thing to think about, not a good route to take. Regardless of what you think, they do happen to be interested in it. And at the very least, they are not simply standing pat at the trade deadline, quote unquote. So look for that trade, look for other trades that they might be looking into, but it's heading in a direction where the Lakers probably will make a trade. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully you get the outcome that you're hoping for, whether that be them making the trade, not making the trade, a different trade, whatever it might be. Hopefully you're on board with it. Hopefully the Lakers make a smart move. And even apart from that, hopefully they win tonight. But those are only my thoughts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the live stream. Hopefully I gave you some further things to think about, a little bit of clarification about the trade, my thoughts on it, and so on and so forth. But appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate everyone who commented, the super chats, leaving comments, likes, whatever it might be. Genuinely appreciate it. But I might do another post-game live stream tonight. Be sure to tune into that. Hopefully the Lakers win. So we'll talk then. If not, will be a video tomorrow, like always. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Always appreciate the support. Enjoy the rest of your day or the rest of your night.